Hi, Ann here from Backroad Buddies, and the video we want to share with you today is about our phone apps. So the apps we use on our phone while we travel. Now we're hoping this information will help inspire you or give you some ideas to make your travels just a little bit easier. Now we've grouped these apps into categories so you can look in the timeline in the description below and go right to a particular category if that's all you're interested in. So let's get started. Category 1 is camping. So the app we use the most to find a campsite or a campground is Campendium. Now you can use it on your phone as a phone app, which is here, and what's nice is we like the maps and the different icons for the different campgrounds, so we normally like to stay in national parks and state parks and county parks, or national forests. So they're in this green icon with the trees, and then they also show the private RV parks as well, and those are the blue with the little trailer. And then if you noticed, I think there was a So there's, he's getting covered up. Where'd he go? They'll also show dump stations. If you've been camping somewhere that doesn't have a dump station and you need one, you can actually find that through there. So you can do it in a map view, and you can actually search. Normally when we're planning out our itinerary, I actually use Campendium on their website on my laptop because I just find it easier. I don't have very good eyes, so looking around on the screen is hard for me. And that's where the map usually really helps, because we're trying to plan out a route and we'll say, okay, what campgrounds are in that area? And we really like that feature. Now, once you've kind of looking in which campground do I want to stay at, they have all kinds of information in there, from cell service to amenities like hookups and what the last price someone reported paying there, and then all these reviews, which is kind of nice to go through in addition to the ratings, because they give an overall rating based on the reviews. But sometimes you need to go in and actually look at them, because people may be complaining about things that you don't really care about. But we really find that really useful, especially knowing what the amenities are and the cell coverage, though, a lot of times cell coverage depends on which site you're in and where you are in the campground, but we really find that's our number one go-to when we're looking for a campground. And we'll also, on the mobile version, even though I use the desktop version when we're planning out a route, is when we're on the go and traveling and we just want to look up real quick, does our next campground have a water fill station? We can look that up easily in Campendium, or we have to change our route or change our plans. It's like, is there another campground nearby we can switch to? Then the mobile app really comes in handy there. Now, over the years, we have tried a couple others. We've used Allstays every now and then. Sometimes they list some different things than Campendium, but normally we go right back to Campendium. Another one is Road Trippers. Actually, Campendium is now owned by Road Trippers. Road Trippers just has a different style of planning out a route than what I like to do, so I tried it a little bit but really didn't care for it. So we actually do have the paid version of Campendium, but the free version works just as well for how we use it anyway. I think we bought the paid version was actually because it kind of came under this Road Pass umbrella, which included Road Trippers and Campendium and To Go RV, which I think they've phased out. But that's why we have the paid version, but the free version of Campendium works just as well. Now, if you're someone who likes to boondock a lot, and what I mean by boondocking is no amenities. Some people just mean you don't have hookups, but if you really like to get out there, on these remote locations for free campsites, there's actually a few other phone apps that a lot of that we've heard that a lot of people like when they're doing that type of boondocking, and that's iOverlander, The Dirt, and U.S. Public Lands, I think it's called. But since that's not really our style of camping, we usually like to be somewhere where we at least have a toilet, even if it's a pit toilet, but and an established campground instead of going down some unknown dirt road where we might get stuck. So that's not our style, but if that's your style, then check out those other apps as well. Another app we use is recreation.gov. So recreation.gov is the website you go to reserve most federal campgrounds, from national forests to national parks, although not all, and reserve, tickets like your timed entry passes or, some cave tour in a national park. So that's all done through the website, but there's also a mobile app which is helpful for some campgrounds, especially some that are first come, first serve, or you're showing up at the last minute and it's too late to reserve the campsite online, but you go there and you just want to pay for it in person. If you don't have, because a lot of those require you to have cash, and if you don't have the cash, some of them support what's called scan and pay. So you go to the campsite, usually there's a barcode to scan in. Now you have to download recreation.gov app ahead of time because a lot of these places don't have cell service, but that's okay if you already have the app on your phone. So you go and either there's a barcode on the campsite or sometimes there's just one barcode for the whole campground, and you go find an open site and then you can pay for it through recreation.gov right there, even if you're offline, which is nice. And then the actual credit card payment doesn't go through until you get cell service again, but at least you've got your campsite and you can stay there for the night. And I think those scan and pays only let you do one night at a time, because it's one of those where you actually physically, and I think it even asked you in there, are you physically there and see that you have that site and you've set up there to claim that site. So you're not stepping on somebody else that has a reservation or is paid for a site. Now the phone app is also nice on recreation.gov because it not only allows you to use scan and pay, but it actually hooks up to your account. And so if you've synced it up recently, then even offline, you've got access to what your campground reservations are, what your tours and tickets and timed entry passes. So all that information is right there. And you can see all the details of all your reservations right there on the phone app. So that's pretty nice. Category 2, RV monitoring. So the app we use almost every time we set up camp is called Level My RV. So here's the app. As you can see, I have my font set really large. So yeah, this one is to use uses some kind of device. And this is the top button is what you want to use. Now it's real easy to set up. If you go into the little gear icon, you set your wheelbase and your width of your RV, and then you'll also want to calibrate it because the phone doesn't necessarily lay flat, because there's, depending on your case, there's a little bump or whatever. So what you want to do is you want to level your RV with a bubble level. Make sure it's perfectly level. Then set your phone on the surface that you're going to use all the time to level your RV, and you want to use a consistent spot all the time, whether it's on a countertop. We like to use the floor next to the driver because when we get to a spot, we'll want to level or try to level, and if we see it's off level, we might actually move the RV around inside the spot to try to find a better spot that's a little more level before we start blocking up the wheels. So then once you've got everything calibrated, then so when you set it on the floor, then it kind of looks like this, and it tells you exactly how much off each of the wheels are. Now this this isn't calibrated for the floor in my house here, but you can see, so if we're off, if a wheel is off by less than 2 inches, we'll use 2x6s to block up that wheel. And if it's off anywhere from 2 to 4 inches, we'll use our go treads, and it kind of folds up so we can adjust it to 3 or 4 inches. And then if it's more than that, we'll sometimes stack the go treads on top of the 2x6s. That gets a little unstable, so we don't like really to use that a whole lot, but we will, or we'll just live with it not being level. Now, you might say, why is it important to be level? Well, for the Echo, it really isn't so much, because there isn't really anything in the RV that requires it to be level. There are some RV, I think, refrigerators that really need to be level to work properly, but there's nothing in the Echo that really hurts anything to be off level. What it hurts is when you're trying to sleep and your feet are higher than your head is not comfortable. You'll probably wake up with headaches or nightmares or something. And then all your cabinet doors and drawers, if you're not level, they, will kind of, it's hard to maneuver. Or when you're cooking and things aren't level and things slide around your pan, or I've even had, when I put a pan on our induction cooktop, if we're not level, the pan has a tendency to slide off the cooktop, which isn't a good thing. So if we can't get level, I'll actually just level the induction cooktop by putting some pot holders underneath it or something. So it is nicer to have a level RV, although it's not a requirement. Now, the next couple of apps are just Bluetooth apps that allow you to connect to some sensors on your RV so you can check on things. One is the Lithionics app to check on your Lithionics batteries. We have 2 Lithionics batteries in our Echo. So this Lithionics app will let us, monitor how full they are, what the voltage is, what the current amps in and out are. And unfortunately, it only allows you to see one battery at a time, and we have 2 of them, so you actually have to open up each one to see the details. And then and since there's 2 of us, there are times when one of our phones has been connected to the battery and the other person can't connect to it. And sometimes you have to close the app and open it back up to try to get the other person to release their connection on it. But other than that, it works great. So we actually use that quite a bit to monitor the level of our batteries. And the other one is actually our propane tanks. So we bought these Mopica tank sensors. They're magnetic. They just go right on the bottom of the tanks, and there's 2 of them in the Echo. So it's nice to know what the levels are, especially if we're coming up to a cold night and we know we're going to be running the furnace all night. We want to make sure we're on a pretty full tank, or when one's getting low, we need to start scheduling a place to stop and refill. So it just connects on the phone with a Bluetooth. The only drawback with that one is that there's batteries in those sensors on the Mopica propane tanks. So they usually last us about 1 season, but we have to remember to replace those batteries at the start of each season because we're on the road about 6 months at a time. So they're usually pretty weak by the end of the season. So before we hit the road in season 6, we installed a different Xantrex control panel. So we replaced the one that came with our Echo with one that was Bluetooth enabled. So that allowed us to hook it up to a phone app, a Xantrex phone app. So there are times when you need to change the settings on the inverter. So the Xantrex panel is for our inverter and the RV. And the interface on the actual control panel is rather cumbersome to actually, you have to kind of go scroll through all the settings to get to the one you want to change a setting. Or if it's, to capture an error code and what's going on if it happens to pop up. And it's so much easier to do from the phone app. So we really recommend making that upgrade if you have an Echo. So before we owned our Winnebago Echo, we owned a Van Duet camper van, which was also based on a Ford Transit van. Now, as most vehicles, you almost need something to read the error codes now. If something goes on, the engine light goes on or whatever. And back when we had the camper van, we had gotten this device called Blue Driver. So it's a little device. It plugs into, I forget what the name of it is, the OBD2 interface. So there's a little place to plug it in underneath the dash on the driver's side. And then it's Bluetooth connected to a phone on your app. So if error codes pop up, you can go in and see the error codes. It actually has information on what to do to correct the situation. So that's very helpful if you're on the road and you're not near a repair shop, or you don't want to bother to take it in to see what the issue is. So that's really a helpful tool to have. Now, at the start of every season, we usually weigh our RV or camper van, and this is to make sure that we are under our gross vehicle weight rating, so GVWR. You may hear people talk about that. And so the best way to do that is actually to go to a CAT scale. So those are the scales that the truckers use. So they're usually found at truck stops. So you go there, and we do it at the beginning of the season because we're fully loaded with all our gear, our groceries, a full tank of gas, a full freshwater tank. So we know we're kind of at our max limit, assuming we don't buy a whole bunch of stuff as we go down the road. So when you go up to the scales, you don't have to have an app, but then it's a little more complicated to do that. With the app, it is so much easier. So CAT Scale has a Weigh My Truck app, which is very helpful. You just pull up onto the scale, and you enter the scale number, which should be visible right there. You confirm to pay, and then you're good to go. And it records your weight, front axle, back axle, your total, and then it also, in your account, stores your history in the app. So we find that very useful to have. Category 3 is navigation. And our number one app for navigation is Google Maps. We haven't found anything that we liked better. Now, we don't have a really large rig. It's a Winnebago Echo, so we're only 23 feet long. I think we're 11 foot 1 inches high. So there are times, especially out on the East Coast, where you have to pay attention to underpasses. So there are RV-specific GPS navigation systems out there where you can set your length and height and make sure you don't get in trouble. But we tried, I forget which one we tried at one time, and we didn't like the routes it gave us. And some of them, at least at the time, didn't go as short as we were. We were in a camper van at that time, though. And we've just found that Google Maps does everything we want to. We like its routing, other than we wish we could pick take the scenic route as opposed to the fastest route all the time. But you can, do things like avoid toll roads or whatever. And we also sometimes like to do our routes. Now, we usually have to adjust the times because we don't always go the speed limit, and we usually kind of take our time. So we usually have to add some time. We can't always trust, well, if Google says it's going to take, 3 hours and 11 minutes, it's probably going to take us 4 or more, right? So we just kind of learn how to factor in how much longer it's going to take us. But we like, looking at that, and then sometimes you can zoom in and see what there is to see along the way. You're like, oh, we're going by Tillamook factory, let's stop there. And sometimes I'll even set a little favorite so we don't forget to go look at this overlook over the ocean or whatever it happens to be. And so we really like that. Now, there's also a couple other things that are nice on here. there are some layers you can actually add. One is the wildfire. So, I mean, this time of year, there's not a whole lot of wildfires going on, so you won't see a whole lot. But in the peak wildfire season, you actually see the smoke, the smoke areas on the map. So that's kind of helpful when you're traveling in the West during wildfire season if you kind of want to avoid a lot of the smoke. Now keep in mind that it's constantly changing depending on which way the wind's blowing, but it gives you an idea of where the fires are and where the large fires are and the smoke plumes that are being created by that. Another one layer that I haven't really used much is air quality. So you can kind of see where the air quality is bad if you want to avoid those areas as well. Now, I should mention there's a lot of times we are in places that don't have cell service. So in order to be able to still have access to Google Maps is you need to download those maps ahead of time so you can use them offline. And the way you do that is if you go into Google Maps and you see your little picture icon there in the upper right and you click on that, you go to offline maps, and then you'll see I have a whole bunch of them saved in there. But you go select your own map, and what I like to do is zoom out until you get the max size of that map. So I'll actually download the maps all along our route for the season if they'll fit on my phone. There's been a couple seasons where they don't all fit, so I'll do the first half or whatever till I run out of space. And then as we go along the season, I set a little calendar reminder, go, hey, we need to download some more maps. So I'll delete the ones we don't need anymore and then add the rest of the season. So if you just kind of pick that up, you say download, and then it takes a little while to download. And every time you're on a Wi-Fi connection, it'll actually try to update those maps. Now, the drawback with working offline, that it won't always have all the information there. You can do routes and you can find your way around, but it won't have things like where's all the restaurants around me or, gas stations. Some of that information you can't access offline. But usually if you're looking for things like that, you're within Wi-Fi or cell coverage for those things. And the other thing I should mention is by default, if you look at these, let's kill that one. You look at these, by default it just kind of numbers the maps. So this is map 139. So I'll usually change that to whatever the area is. For one, that just helps me keep track of which ones I've downloaded and which ones I haven't. But it also helps me identify which maps I don't need anymore and I can delete. So it's just a nice way of organizing on them. Now you don't actually have to pick them out. Google Maps, depending where you are, will automatically go to the appropriate downloaded maps. So you don't ever have to select it, I want to use this map. But it's very helpful to have those offline maps because especially the way we like to travel, we like to get off on those back roads where there's no cell service. So still having a way to navigate around it is helpful. Another app that we've used in the past is Gas Buddy. Gas Buddy. Now, Gas Buddy is great for finding the cheapest gas station near you because it has all the prices. It'll actually kind of point out which ones are cheap. And we've used that in the past, but now Google Maps actually shows the prices of the gas stations around you. No, it doesn't particularly point out the cheapest one for you, but I mean, you can easily see which one the cheapest one is. And whether Google Maps lists them all or not, I don't know. There's times where I've opened it up and seen some gas stations and then I go look again and it shows me more that it didn't show me last time. So I don't know what the deal is there, but we've stopped using Gas Buddy because we're already in Google Maps and it shows us gas prices and will route us there. So we don't really use Gas Buddy anymore, but it might be something you might want to look into. Category 4 is hiking. For hiking, there, in our opinion, isn't anything that we've found that beats AllTrails. The amount of trails that are in there, the amount of reviews and information from elevation gain to mileage and to what to watch out for, creek crossings or whatever. It's invaluable, and it is the tool we use the most when we are hiking. Now we have the paid version. The paid version allows you to download different trails, and then you can use them offline. And that's really helpful when you're on a hike, especially if you get into a situation where the trail's not real well marked and you're not sure which direction to go. It shows you exactly where you are on the trail, or if you're not on the trail. It actually shows some of the trails around you too. So if you happen to get off trail, you made a wrong turn somewhere, you can figure out how to get back to the route you wanted to go on. And we rarely hike without it. It's just so nice. Another hiking app that Keith actually likes to use is the Hiking Project. It's not as extensive as AllTrails. It doesn't have as many trails as AllTrails. It doesn't have as many reviews. It's just is not as much data, but it is a free app. I don't think it works offline, at least the free version. I don't know if there's a paid version or not, but we don't use it a whole lot. We'll sometimes use it to compare if, we kind of question the information. Is this really a, 10-mile hike? And then I'll look over on Hiking Project and kind of compare the stats and if it even has the trail. So sometimes it's nice just to have another source of information to look things up. Now, another thing we always hike with, this isn't a phone app in and of itself. This is a Garmin inReach communicator. This is great to have as an SOS because it's a satellite communicator. But we use it all the time. When we start a hike, we message our kids that we're starting a hike. We message them when we're done. We sometimes message them in the middle of a hike just to let them know we're okay. And this is great when you don't have cell service. But it also sends our GPS location, so if our kids, hopefully they'll notice when they stop receiving messages from us, and we'll contact authorities, and then they have our last known GPS location and know where to send a search rescue to try to find us. Now, if you notice, there's no keyboard on this thing. There's just a couple buttons, so if you really need to send a message, and there are some preset messages in here which aren't too bad to send from the device, but even those, we use a phone app that connects to the device via Bluetooth. So it makes it much easier to send those messages than using that kind of clumsy interface there. I think it's just called Garmin Messenger or Garmin inReach Messenger. And so you can, connect to the device. Our service is suspended right now, but so you can, see these, like this message here. We actually use it when we leave a campground and are heading to our next campground, and then when we arrive at the next campground, so they can kind of track our progress through the season. Because we're gone for 6 months at a time, and something could happen to us, and no one would even know to go looking for us if we didn't do regular updates with our kids. So, and as you can see, this message here, like at camp, no cell or internet whatsoever for the next 4 days. So they know that, we can't be reached via cell phone, and they can respond via satellite to our Garmin devices. So that's kind of how we stay in touch when we don't have cell service. Category 5 is national parks. So the National Park Service has a phone app called NPS app, and we have used that. So you open it up and you find a particular national park, and it could be a national park, capital N, capital P, or it could be like a national monument or one of the other NPS units. And you can download those ahead of time. So that button there, so download for offline use. So it's another one of those things. If you don't have cell service, especially when you're in the middle of a large national park, you may not have cell service, so you can download all the park information onto your phone for that park. So another thing you need to remember to download ahead of time. And we have used this for various national parks, and we found it's kind of hit or miss on how useful the information is in here, but it is a good thing to check. So you know, things to do, hiking, where to stay. There's, you know, different sites, and you can kind of go start tour. That's a new one. I don't know. So, but you just need to go in and see what information is available. We have seen where it'll actually show you where you are on the map. But then other national parks, their information is rather sparse and not that useful. So you just have to go in and look and see if it'll help you or not. But we've kind of discovered, I think we actually used it quite a bit when we were on Natchez Trace to see where all the stops were and what we wanted to see and little descriptions of it. So it is nice to have, especially if you're in a national park that doesn't have good cell service, which is probably quite a few of them. But it's, yeah, just nice to have and have handy. There is another app out there that we've heard about called Park Wolf. We haven't really used that one yet, but I think they are known for their like audio tours, so it'll tell you as you go on driving along what's coming up next and what kind of give you a little information that way. Plus it has some heat maps where wildlife sightings have been. But now that's another one where you have to download. Now the free version only lets you download 77%, as I've discovered, because I don't have the paid version. So you have to have the paid version to get all the information. I don't know what it includes and what it doesn't include. As I said, we haven't really used this one yet, so I can't really comment on how it compares to the NPS app. But, you know, our philosophy is always the more information, the better. So try them both out, see what they have, see which one you like. And it may depend on which park you're going to, which one you like better. So just something to investigate. Category 6, weather. When you're traveling, keeping an eye on the weather is always a good idea, whether it's severe weather or just how windy it's going to be, when it's going to rain, when it's going to snow, how cold's it going to get overnight, do I need to turn the furnace on? Knowing the weather is just very helpful. Now, weather forecasts are not always very accurate because there's a lot of variables in there. So we actually use more than one weather app. So I like to use, which one is it here? I like to use the Weather Channel. So I use the Weather Channel app. Keith likes to use the Apple Weather app on his phone. And so we'll kind of compare, well, my forecast says this, so mine doesn't have rain in the forecast. So we'll take a look at both of those. And in addition, when we don't have cell service or we can't hook up Starlink, we actually got Starlink last season, then we'll rely actually on this Garmin inReach again. We can actually request the local forecast and it actually will give you a pretty detailed forecast. So we'll use the Garmin inReach again using the Messenger app on the phone where we request a local forecast. And I'll put a picture of what that looks like on the screen here. And that we have found helpful when we're out in a remote location and really want to know, well, what's the forecast for tomorrow? Do we really want to go on this overnight backpacking trip or not, right? or on this hike. So it is useful to always have access to the weather. Another weather app that we've been starting to use is called Drive Weather. Now there's a paid version and an unpaid version. I have the unpaid one on my phone here. It seems to restrict a lot of the useful functionality of it, but Keith actually downloaded and paid for the pro version. Now, what's useful about this over the other weather apps, it just doesn't tell you the weather of where you currently are or one particular location, but will show you the weather all along your route with things like temperature and wind speed and icy conditions. So if you're trying to determine your route for the next day, you can actually see, do I want to go over this mountain pass or do I want to route around it? So we see that as being very useful, but we don't have an extensive amount of use with it yet. So we'll let you know how that goes. But as you can see here, this is temperature along it, and we can do feels like, which takes into account the wind chill. Now I can change the departure time, and it'll show me the forecast along that route. The pro version will show you the wind speeds. So if you've got a high profile vehicle like an RV and you're concerned about how much wind you're going to be driving through or icy conditions, like I said, you need to have the pro version to look at those. But we think it's really going to be a useful tool when you're planning out your routes for the next day or two, especially if it looks like there's going to be bad weather possibly along the route. Category 7 is financial. So the first financial app we use is actually an app that is with our credit union. We bank at a credit union and they have a phone app, but what we really like about it, in addition to the normal things like, deposit a check or check on your balance or things like that, it also has a locator where we can locate ATMs around our current location and also lists whether they have ATM fees or not. So we can find a free ATM, and our credit union doesn't charge us ATM fees either, so we can save a little bit of money on those transaction fees by searching for an ATM around our current location. So you might want to check out your bank and see if they have a similar app, because we found that really useful. Another financial app we use is Apple Wallet. So we have credit cards stored in there, so we can use Apple Pay. We have our driver's license stored in there, but that requires whoever you're showing it to have a scanner, because it actually doesn't show all the information. It's something, I guess, that they have to have. So I believe in Colorado, the police have this device that they can scan that instead of actually seeing your physical driver's license. I still carry my physical driver's license too, but it's kind of always nice to have a little backup in case something happens. And then there's also other things you can put in your Apple Wallet. Sometimes when you purchase tickets for admission to somewhere, you can load them into your Apple Wallet and then you have them there even if you're offline. So we actually use that a lot for different types of tickets or passes, and load that in our Apple Wallet if that option's available. Category 8 is connectivity. So we're kind of listing this Garmin InReach again, because if we don't have cell service or Starlink, and even though this is also satellite, we find this works better than Starlink because they don't have to have a really good connection. It's just sending text messages. And we've also found it works even better than the satellite connections now that are available on the iPhone. And again, we use that Garmin InReach Messenger app to send and receive text messages and local weather forecasts. One of the first things we do when we're setting up camp at a new campground is figure out how we're going to connect to the internet. I know some people go camping to get away from the internet, but we have reasons that we like to stay connected. And so we're trying to figure out, are we using cell on our phones through our Verizon Jetpack? Do we need WeBoost on or off? Are we going to set up Starlink? And the tool that helps us do all that is an app called Speed Test. Now you can go to their website in a browser and run it that way, but there's also an app for the phone. And so this is different than just looking at, your cell signal and going, how many bars do I have? Because that's not really a good indication of how much data you can send up and down due to traffic on the cell tower or whatever. So if you use Speed Test, it actually tries to send data back and forth to known servers, and it measures the speed. So as you can see here, we're screaming because this is over our home Wi-Fi network. So it better be screaming fast. But it'll do both the download speeds and the upload speeds. And it's a good way of comparing which way we want to connect. Generally, we'll actually prefer the Verizon if we can, because it's unlimited data, at least the plan we were on. Starlink takes a little effort to set up, but it's usually faster than cell. And then kind of as a last resort, we'll use AT&T on our phones, but then we're limited to how much hotspot data we can do on our phones, and we start getting charged if we go over that. So that's kind of what we do when we get to a place and try to determine which way we're going to connect. Another app we use is a VPN. Now, generally, if we're just going over a hotspot on our phones or using Starlink or using the Verizon Jetpack, we don't really need to use a VPN unless we want to change our IP location, which we generally don't do. But if we are going over a Wi-Fi, like at a campground or a restaurant or something, which we do on occasion, I think it was outside of Joshua Tree National Park, we spent some time inside a McDonald's just to use their Wi-Fi. But when we are on a public Wi-Fi, we use a VPN, and you should too. It protects your data and encrypts it, because it's a public Wi-Fi is kind of, your data's out there and people can get a hold of it. So the VPN we use is called Bitdefender. We've had that for quite a long time. So there's a lot of them out there. So do your research and which one you want to use. As long as they're one of the big names, I really don't know. I haven't done a comparison lately to know which is the better deal or provides better features, but Bitdefender is the one we use. So in addition to the VPN, we also have, so that's an app that's on your phone. So if you're connecting via your phone, there's an app to do that. If you are doing it from your laptop, then there's a kind of application you load on the laptop as well. So this is the VPN app, and it's on right now. So you can turn it on and off. I'm on our home Wi-Fi, so I don't really need to have it on. But there's also a mobile security app where you can do scans. So you can scan your device just to make sure that you don't have a virus or whatever on there. Another connectivity app, kind of along the security route that we use, is LastPass, and we use that to store all our passwords. It seems like everything today wants you to have an account and a password, and so you can use LastPass not only to store your password securely, and then you only have one password to remember, but it also is a good way of generating very secure passwords when you create an account. So there's an app on the phone that allows you to access all those passwords from your phone, and then there's also a browser extension, so when you're on a laptop in the browser, that all your passwords are there and they're linked together. So if you add a password via your laptop, it shows up on your phone and vice versa. So there's other apps out there that do similar things. So we actually recommend having some kind of password store. Now you make sure you really have a secure master password and have a backup. There is a way of it's not easy to get access again if you've forgotten that master password. So make sure you really have tight control over that master password and know what it is. Category 9 is miscellaneous. Now the ones in this category aren't really RV or travel related specifically, but I find I use them a lot while we travel, and I use them at home as well. The first one is an app called Checklist, and make sure you get the right one because there's other ones named Check who have nothing to do with checklists. And this is just a really simple app that has resettable checklists. So you're like, well, I've got things that do checklists, but what's nice about Check is it is resettable, and I've found that a lot of checklists aren't resettable. You can't reuse the same checklist over and over again. So things I have in here that are helpful are like breaking camp, setting up camp, hiking, backpacking, preparing RV for storage, prepare for season, blowout procedure, anti-freeze fill procedure. There are things, most of them are things we don't do often or we haven't done in a while, so it's nice to go look at the checklist, make sure we didn't forget anything. But the one that we actually do a lot, and we actually look at the checklist a lot, is breaking camp. And that's because if we forget one of those items on there, not all of them, but some of them can have disastrous effects. You leave a window open in your RV and start driving down the road, chances are you're going to break your hinges. Or you forgot to turn the propane off, or you forgot to disconnect your electric and start pulling away. So breaking camp is one of those that we almost always at least refer to. Sometimes we'll actually go through step by step as we're doing it. You can check it off and then we have it set so you don't see it anymore. Or we'll after we've gotten the habit and we kind of do it all the time, you'll kind of go through and think you got everything, and then you go back to the list. Oh, did I do that? Oh, did I do it? Oh, I forgot to turn off the water heater. And you go do that. So the breaking camp checklist and having check to be able to do that is, very invaluable. I also have setting up camp in there, but I generally don't use that. Usually we wait until we need something before we pull it out, so we don't have a lot of stuff out there. So it's not as critical. So I almost rarely use the setup camp. Although there are times where, we get to a campground and comes dinner time, we've had dinner and then we get ready to do the dishes only to realize we hadn't turned the water heater on. So now we got to wait for the water to heat up before we can wash our dishes. So maybe checking the checklist would have been a good idea, but we have a tendency not to. But breaking camp we do all the time. And then some of these others are, things you don't do very often, so you want to make sure that there's not something, it's more kind of a reminder of what all there is to do. But it's nice to have all those checklists. And then when you're done going through your checklist, it's very easy to just go up here and say reset checklist, and then it restores the checklist back to the full list again. And another app we use I use anyway, is called Google Tasks. As you can tell, I kind of like my lists of things. Now, Google Tasks allows me to keep all kinds of lists. Now, these are not resettable lists, but they're kind of where a lot of my go-to or to-do lists are. So I actually have one that's menu. So I'll set up a menu for the week, and I can actually assign them to dates if I want to. I don't always do that. But it's sometimes especially when we're traveling, you might want to plan out which meals you're going to have on which days because, this one we need to grill, so let's do it on a nice weather day, on Tuesday, where, Wednesday it's supposed to rain, so let's have the soup that I make in the Instant Pot inside on Wednesday. So I might do that. And then once I've created a menu, then I go through and create my grocery list of what I need to do there. And then I have another kind of a catch-all to-do list, which is called My Tasks or My Tasks. And that, as you know, I go through the day, or whenever something comes to me like, oh, I need to remember to do that, I'll put it in My Tasks. And, you know, at the bottom, I don't have it assigned to a date, so when I go through, I can like scan through it and look like, okay, what do I need to get done now, or what if there's a particular date that has to be, something has to be done, I can assign it to the date, and then it kind of pops up to the top of the list, so it helps me prioritize that list. So I actually like using that. And those are basically the 3 lists I do: the menu, the groceries, and then My Tasks. And what's also nice is, because this is a Google app, it actually will sync it up with your Google Calendar. So if you have something assigned to a date, it'll actually show up on your Google Calendar. And you can toggle that on and off whether you want to see those or not. But that's kind of nice to kind of tie everything together. And then last but not least is the Apple Notes app. I use this really just to jot down quick little things. So I have kind of Instant Pot notes, kind of travel notes. So it's whenever I'm out and about and I just want to remember something, somebody's name, I'll just jot it down in one of my little notes. The Instant Pot is great. If you can see, it's like, well, how long do I, roast beets for in there? Or how many minutes is that to steam that egg to give that perfect soft cooked egg, in the Instant Pot. So I kind of jot those down in little notes, and then I can go back and refer to them later. Well, that's it. I hope you found some of those things helpful. So thanks for watching. And if you want more details, especially links to some of the apps or information that I went over in here, you can look in the description below for a link to our related blog post, so check that out. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Ta-ta for now.